Christy, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Perfectly Wicked, Simply Celebrate Fall, Happy Harvest, and Jump for Joy. So I've stamped the images I'll be using on some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. So I wanted to create a little scene today with some cats in a pumpkin patch that would kind of be like fall / Halloween themed. Not really too Halloween, so that it could be given for more than just that day. But I wanted to do the pumpkins in some different combos just so that everything isn't exactly the same. So the first combo that I'm doing is YR04, YR07, and YR09. I'm putting the YR09 where the lines are to divide up each of the 3 sections of the pumpkin, and then blending out on either side of that with the YR07. And then I'll come in with the YR04 and fill in all of the highlighted areas, which is the sides and the front where the light would be hitting it the most. Although this will be a kind of nighttime scene, more of like a sunset scene though, not really a too dark scene. So that's why I didn't go, really shadowed with my coloring. Went a little bit brighter. I wanted this to be a happy, kind of cheery fall scene. So then I'm going to keep the YR4 and add in the YR00 and the YR02, and I'll do some more pumpkins. Now you could absolutely color all of your pumpkins exactly the same. I just like to play with color, and so I wanted to try doing pumpkins in different combos and just have fun with it. But if you wanted to mass produce or just make your cards much more simple and quick, you could obviously just pick one of these combos and do all of your pumpkins exactly the same. So again, I just put the darkest in the creases and then blend it out and put the highlight in the center and the sides. And then I'm even going to do some kind of grayish pumpkins. This is a combo that I've been using a lot on mice lately, and I thought it would be fun to do some pumpkins in this combo as well. It is W00, E70, and E71. So it kind of looks like a really soft, kind of creamy gray shade, and I thought it was really fun. So I'm going to do this one, and I'm going to do this small pumpkin up above, and I'm also going to color 2 more pumpkins off screen. I realized as I was coloring these that I was just going to need a few more, so I did 1 more of the large and 1 more of the small. And the larger one was the one that I used that combo for. Then I'm going to add in some E74 and start doing the stems of the pumpkins. Some of them I'm going to do with E74 and blend out with E71. And then the rest I'm going to do E71, blend it out with E70 just for a little bit of variation mixed in there. For my last pumpkin combo, I'm going to go with something that's a little bit more of a golden pumpkin or has a little bit more of a brownish tone, and that is YR12, YR14, and YR18. So I'm going to do this last pumpkin in the row and then the extra small pumpkin. And to be honest, I wish I had done 2 extra small pumpkins. I think that would have looked even nicer in the scene, but I didn't think ahead that much. So I'm moving on to my kitties, and I'm going to do them with neutral grays. I'm using N3, N5, and N7. I wanted both of these kitties to be black kitties just because it kind of goes with the fall Halloween theme, and also I've only had a kitty 1 time in my life, and she was a black kitty. Her name was Alex, and I really loved her, but I am allergic to cats. I didn't know that I was allergic until I got her, and so I have never had a cat since. But I just started with the N7 and then blended out with the N5 and made sure to use the N3, especially in the facial area, so that you can really see those features. If you color the face too dark, you'll lose the eyes and nose and mouth, and then it kind of just becomes a blob. So you do have to be careful when coloring dark objects, or living objects anyway. So I always use the lightest shade in my combo for the face, and that's what I did for both of these guys. I did both of them black. I thought about doing this top kitty as a black and white cat, but I decided to just go with the black cat theme because I think that black cats are really, really cute and they often get a bad rap. So I personally love black cats. I'm going to add some rosy cheeks and some little pink noses using R20 and R22. The R22 is a bit dark, but I wanted to make sure it showed up on their black fur, so I used that first and then traced around the edges of that with the R20 and used the R22 for their noses. And then for the leaves, I wanted to do a two-toned leaf. Where I am right now, the leaves are just starting to turn, so I kind of wanted to represent that and have a mixture of both the gold and green on all of the leaves. So I did Y21 and Y26, started with the Y26 and then blended out with the Y21, and I just picked a section toward the tip of each leaf to add these golden shades to. And then I'm going to go with some kind of desaturated greens. I'm using G40, G43, and G46. Now the trick to getting two different color families to blend on a single object is to make sure that where the colors meet up, they're light enough to go over each other. So the G40 is very pale and it's going to blend nicely over those golden tones and just make like a seamless transition between the two. So I started with the G46, added a little bit of that as far away from the gold part as possible, then blended out with the G43, and now I'm using that G40 to bridge the gap between those two tones, just overlapping those gold shades a tiny bit so it gets that seamless transition like I said. And I do think that captured what I was going for really well. So I'm going to trim these images out with their matching dies. Then I'm going to move on to my background. I use the Lawn Fawn Outside In Stitch Rectangle Stackables to die cut a piece of Bristol Smooth Surface cardstock. And I wanted to create this pink sky that kind of transitions into orange. So it's like a sunset scene with a large moon in the center. So I'm starting with some Sponge Sugar Distress Oxide ink in the center. And then I'm going to bring in some Saltwater Taffy. Saltwater Taffy is this gorgeous peachy pink shade. So it's going to help me bridge the transition between the pink and the orange. So I'm just blending that in on the outside edges of the sides and the top. I'm not going to do the bottom because I'm going to do some grass down there. And then I'll go back to my first ink blending tool and just smooth out the transitions between those two shades. And then I'm going to bring in some Carved Pumpkin. Carved Pumpkin is the only orange Distress Oxide that I own. I'm going to be really careful with it because it's really bright. I just want to add a little bit of that, and then I'm going to go back over it with the Saltwater Taffy to kind of mute it down, and then I'll go back in with my Sponge Sugar once again to give me that little kind of halo glow that I wanted. And once I'm finished with that, I'm going to come in with the grass, and I wanted to use desaturated greens again to match the coloring. So I ended up going with Bundled Sage, and I'm going to bring that up from the bottom. So pink and green don't necessarily blend that well together, so I'm trying not to overlap the two very much. But I am going to have that border completely covered in the final card, so I knew it wouldn't even be seen, so I wasn't worried too much about it. Then I'm going to take some water and spritz that onto an acrylic block and tap that off with a small paintbrush to give me some little drops of water that are going to react with that cardstock and lift some of that ink. And then I'll blot that up with a paper towel. Then I'm going to also add some ink shades onto there with the splatter. For the top, I'm going to use the saltwater taffy. So I'm just pressing that onto a block, and I'll mix that with the water that was left over on the block. And I just covered the grass portion with the paper towel because I didn't want the pink in the green. And then I thought about covering up the top, but I stopped myself just in time because I knew it might smear some of those ink spots. So you could wait for it to dry. I decided to just go for it, but I'm just being really careful to tap down at the bottom. And I knew if a little bit of the green went into the bottom of the pink, it wouldn't matter because, like I said, that border is not going to show. Then I'm going to add some Lawn Fawn liquid Stardust. Just make sure to shake that bottle up really well because the pigment does settle down to the bottom. And I'm going to tap that over the background as well to give me these kind of pearlized shimmer droplets that I think look really nice for these slightly spooky scenes. It's not really a spooky scene, but it's got those fall Halloween vibes. I'm going to set this panel aside to dry completely. And then I have also die cut the full moon die out of another piece of Bristol. And I'm going to blend some pumice stone Distress Oxide onto that. I went with pumice stone because it is a warmer gray, so it does match the warm grays and the E70s that I used in my Copic coloring. I'm going to put it heavy-handed on one side and then a little bit softer on the other as I go around to just give it more of kind of a glow on the one side. And then I'm also going to do some splatter on the background of this with both the pumice stone and the liquid Stardust. So just tapping that all over so I'll get that nice bit of shine on that as well. And then I'll set that moon aside to dry. Next, I'm going to work on my sentiment, and I'm using the one that comes in the Simply Celebrate Fall stamp set. And it just says, "Have a happy fall." I thought that would be more universal than a specifically Halloween sentiment. So I'm going to stamp that out a couple times using the jet black ink, which is the same ink that I used for my Copic coloring. So I took a look at that and I felt like the word fall just wasn't quite as dark as the rest. So I stamped it out one more time and I liked that much better. It was nice and bold. Then I'm going to pop my card base in my MISTI. I'm using Lawn Fawn Fake Tan cardstock and Pumpkin Spice ink. The greeting that I'm using on the inside comes from the half-size set that is Simply Fall Sentiments. And then I also did the string of leaves from the Simply Celebrate Fall. So I'm going to stamp those down twice to make sure it's nice and bold. And then I can start assembling my scene. So I'm going to take that background piece and glue that flat to the card. And I used that outside in stitch rectangle stackables like I said earlier, so it's going to give me a little bit of that border of the fake tan cardstock, which I think fades nicely into the corners of the sky. And then I'm going to add the moon so it is just dipping below the horizon line so that I can cover up the bottom of it with my strip of pumpkins. I've added some foam tape to the back of that. And I'm just going to make sure that it is centered on the card between the left and the right so that the space between the pumpkin and the stitching line is even on both sides. And once I have that where I wanted it, took me a few tries to get that just right. I will press that down into place. And then I've also taken the black cat that's walking and I'm going to put him on some foam tape right above those pumpkins as if he is creeping across the tops of those. Then I have my two larger pumpkins, and I didn't put foam tape on the back of those because I knew that they would overlap the string of pumpkins, the strip of pumpkins. So I had to kind of wait and see how much of it would be overlapping before I added it. So I just put it on the lower part of the larger pumpkins, and then I put it completely on the back of the smaller two pumpkins. So I'm kind of figuring out where I want the placement of those to go. I want the same color not to be right next to each other. I want to, kind of split it up. So I have the darker large pumpkin on the right, and then the grayish pumpkin on the left. And then I'm going to reverse it with the minis. And I'm going to figure out where I want my cat to go. So I actually realized that I didn't want that pumpkin there because that's exactly where I wanted my black cat to be. So I had to pull that up. You do have to be careful. It ripped the cardstock there a little bit. But since I'm putting the cat right over top of that, it wasn't a big deal. So I'm going to get my black cat there. And I wanted him to be kind of like holding on to the top of that pumpkin. So I'm going to put the darker orange pumpkin over by his paw, and then I'll have a lighter pumpkin over on the right hand side. And that's what I mean. I kind of wish I had one more pumpkin to put on the left hand side, but I didn't color it, and I didn't want to, waste the time now to do it. I think it's still a really cute scene. I just personally think it would have been a little more balanced with one more pumpkin over on the left, and then I could have moved the larger pumpkin in a little bit, but it's all good. I added some foam tape to the back of my sentiment banner, which I die cut using the Everyday Sentiment Banner dies. I used the middle size. And then I just adjusted those small pumpkins so that the bottom of them was overlapping that banner a little bit just to integrate it more into the scene. And then I have my leaves. Now the sky is pretty empty up top, so I wanted some of these leaves to be blowing around to kind of pull your eye upward and kind of fill in some of that empty space. So I'm adding some foam tape to the backs of 3 of those that are going to be placed into the sky, just kind of figuring out where I want them to go. And also making sure that I give them a little turn this way or that so that they're not all facing the same direction. So the other 2 leaves that I have, one of the large and one of the small, I wanted to be down by the front row of pumpkins since all of the ones in the back row have leaves. I did have to pull up the edge of this grayish pumpkin to slip a leaf behind, but it wasn't such a big deal. It was fine. And then I'm going to add a smaller one over on the right side to balance that out, also between the small pumpkin and the large one. And I did add a little bit of foam tape to the part of it that would be hanging over into the background. And then that last leaf, like I said, is going to go up in the sky as well, just to create some more movement. That one I'm going to end up putting over more toward the left side just to kind of fill in some of the empty space over there. So I just adjusted those leaves one more time, and then I wanted to add a little trail to show the movement of these leaves. So I grabbed one of the little butterfly trails from Butterfly Kisses, and I'm stamping that down in some narwhal ink. And just making sure that they go off in different directions as well so that we have like this breeze that's gusting kind of up from different directions. So last, I just wanted to add a bit of sparkle and shine onto my images as well. So I'm just doing this on the leaves only. I'm using platinum stickles because it has that kind of metallic-y tone to it that I think goes really well with those grayish pumpkins and just the warmer feel of this color palette. So I just added it onto the leaves almost as if it were the little veining in them. And that is going to finish off this card. So I'm going to lift that up so you can see all of that shine, also with that liquid Stardust in the background. and I'll give you another peek at the inside. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one and that you're having a fun time transitioning into fall. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Ring that notification bell so you never miss a video. I post new ones every Monday and Friday. I'll have links to all of the products I use listed in the description bar below. And if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. You can click on either one to check them out. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you had a good one, and I'll see you soon in another video.